I'm reporting today on my interview with Dave Drankel. So first, some background on Dave Drankel. For those who haven't read our article in the MUFON Journal, the experience which led to his report to MUFON took place 3 years ago on August 12th, 2018 at 4:20 a.m. The witness had been playing a video game, and he reported that a small creature, which fit the typical description of a gray, peeked around his office door, startling and frightening him. After an indeterminate time, the creature backed away and closed the door. So there's the creature. Dave collected himself, rushed out, and searched the house. And the house was locked, and he found nothing. After searching the house, he rushed into their bedroom where his wife was sleeping and searched the room. Dave said she woke up and said, with a strange sound of certainty, "You saw an alien, didn't you?" He was shocked. She said that she didn't know how she knew, she just knew. Primary investigator Michael Cimino and secondary investigator Anna Moss investigated this case. I reviewed it, and all three of us agreed that the witness is sincere, articulate, and intelligent. The disposition conclusion was unknown, the other being an entity. The witness was very concerned about anonymity, so we did not ask for proof of identity online, where it could theoretically be hacked. But for the integrity of our investigations, we need to confirm witness identity. So on Wednesday, August 25th, I drove to Rochester, Minnesota, and met Dave at the Forager at 3 p.m. I showed Dave my driver's license, and he showed me his. He's definitely a real person. There were a dozen other patrons there, mostly young couples. Masks were required, but you could remove them for eating and drinking. We chose an outside table under a gazebo for the interview. Dave's background, I asked him about this very early, about his ethnic background. He answered, Mutt, a variety of European sources, and some Native American, Osage, maybe some Blackfeet. We briefly discussed Native American Star Nation lore. Dave has had some strange experiences throughout his life. At age 5, Dave begged his mother to take him to a park nearby. And late in the afternoon, his mother, after his nagged all afternoon, his mother finally agreed, and they walked until they were just about to enter the park. Suddenly, Dave saw 2 glowing red eyes, was frightened, and begged his mother to take him home. The boy didn't want to explain why to his mother, and he did not. She was really flabbergasted by this sudden change of mind. Then there was the Teddy Ruxpin. I wasn't familiar with these. This is a toy-like talking bear. One night, anyway, as a young boy, Dave was given a Teddy Ruxpin. Per Wikipedia, Teddy Ruxpin is an animatronic children's toy in the form of a talking bear. The toy's mouth and eyes move while he reenacts stories played on an audio tape cassette deck built into its back. One night after Dave went to bed, Teddy Ruxpin made a noise without being turned on. The next morning, Dave woke up to find that his bed had been moved against the door. This bed was way too heavy for him to move at that young age. He's also seen shadow people, and I didn't go into any description of these with him, and I don't know that much about shadow people. He's also seen orbs, and I would like to have gotten a picture of a real orb to put in here, but anyway, they often come in 3 different colors, green or red or orange. Now we get to something a little more interesting. He writes that while he was in college, a roommate and he spoke as they looked out our dorm window and out onto the parking lot. He was waiting for his girlfriend to arrive. As we talked and waited to see her car, speaking of trivial topics, we both noticed a distant light outside. It moved toward us, went through the window before us, came straight at me, curved and zigzagged between us before moving through the doorway to the room and exiting. It wasn't an orb, it was more of a stream or ribbon, finite in its length. We both looked at each other in shock, and my roommate said, "Did you just see?" And I finished his sentence saying, "A blue light," which he clarified as being a stream of light. Ribbon is my word for it. After sharing frantically, we both agreed that we had seen the same thing. Then there was the camping trip. And again, there was an account of this in the journal, but it's worth telling about again. He writes, the most significant event prior to the August 2018 experience with the gray was when my wife and I went on our first and final tent camping trip together. We went to sleep in the cold. It got somewhere between 30 and 40 degrees at night. I slept in a mummy sleeping bag, fully clothed in warm pajamas and under an extra blanket. I had terrifying dreams that night that were difficult to remember. Running in the cold, in the dark, in a cold place with a floor like metal, as well as being covered in some kind of membrane. I somewhat remember being awake, tearing the membrane off of me, or trying to as I screamed. But it was hazy, like when you sleepwalk and can kind of remember some things, but not well. And it almost seems like it's not your memory. I woke up in the cold, but I didn't feel cold. I was lying naked except for my underwear on top of my sleeping bag. It was zipped up, and my clothes were inside. I quickly got inside, and as I did, my wife woke up. She said, "What was that?" And I didn't know what she meant. Did I sleep talk? I wondered, thinking that maybe I had night terrors. We exchanged what we recalled about our experiences. She said that she remembered some kind of blue light and that I was clawing at my skin. She said that it was as if she were paralyzed and also not fully awake, and that it was becoming harder to remember. The details were hazy. She said that I was screaming in a way that she had never heard anyone, not in a horror movie or in any other place, ever scream. She said that the screaming was so horrifying, she thought that I was being eaten alive, even though all she could see was me clawing at myself. Then she said she just fell back asleep almost instantly. She said that she woke up at the same time that I did, just before I got back into my sleeping bag. Dave says that through meditation, information has been downloaded into his mind. In advance of our meeting, I had told Dave that I wanted to discuss systemic problems and solutions because he had written that during the 3 years since the visit by the Gray, quoting him, "I can now recognize systemic needs. I can identify the potential for the direction that we should be headed to improve those systems and ourselves as a species. And I have learned about the importance of love and light now more than ever. I realize that the human race has a long way to go, and there are some easy steps that we could take in the next decade to get so much farther, but we probably won't because we're too focused on the wrong things, ourselves and our worldly attachments primarily. Problem number one is that we are too self-centered. I asked, what does he see as our greatest systemic problem? He answered, our egocentrism, our lack of awareness of our connections to each other. There is a concept called ego death that could do a lot for us. Meditation 20 to 30 minutes a day to quiet our minds is good. Other big problems are our educational system and our prison system. So we went into a discussion of our educational system. Dave says his calling is education. It is plain to me that he is an educator and an original thinker. Dave believes that he says that we should not make children memorize dates or much information in general. Now we have computers which can efficiently produce a huge quantity of information as needed. But the tasks, structure, and intended learning outcomes of schools have remained the same. Consume information, study hard for the test, take it, and then forget most of what you've learned. I call this bulimic memorization, bulimic learning, because we focus on consuming information through short-term memorization, regurgitate what we were told, and forget all but the fundamentals and the most socially or emotionally charged moments. In an age where the newest information is readily accessible with a few pokes or clicks, where technology, progression, and information double at a faster and faster rate every day, I would argue that these old ways of thinking and learning are no longer practical. Students still learn calculus so they can practice medicine. Do you know how many doctors use calculus or even remember how to perform these operations? Out of the ones I know and have asked, the answer is very few. Their brains have had to make room for more useful information, most of which they didn't learn in traditional classrooms, but from inquiry-based methods and hands-on training. How does that make sense? The answer is the same across the board. It doesn't. The current education system is antiquated. It has kept pace with progress very poorly. Then I asked teachers another question. What do you think the world will be like in another 20 years? Today, we already live in a world where the millennials, people currently in their 30s, have on average switched careers 2 to 3 times, not jobs, careers. This problem is expected to become more common and get much worse as the world changes at breakneck speeds over the next 2 decades. The truth is, we have no idea what the world will be like at that time, and is likely to be vastly different from the one we live in today if we continue along the current trajectory. What we do know is that memorizing information and testing are not likely to be useful skills. The workers of tomorrow will likely need to be skilled with their hands, problem solvers, creative thinkers, effective communicators, technologically inclined and adaptable, virtual collaborators, and most of all, versatile and creative. Today's schools are not teaching children to think. Students should be given a voice in their schools and a mixture of feedback loops between students and teachers, and well-designed research that is not test-focused should aim to improve instruction. This step would move toward authentic learning and assessment and would step out of the era of standardized testing as we know it. PE class wouldn't be just about dodgeball, that's physical education, and the annual presidential fitness test. It would be about learning about proper nutrition and diving into the science of what that even means, engaging in lifelong habits of exercise, and allowing students to explore fitness through sports, hobbies, and interests that are physically active with long-term potential. We should create a system of free, high-quality online classes accessible to and customizable by any school. A step beyond that would involve a system that we're capable of developing today, but likely won't. To create a system of free, high-quality online classes accessible and customizable by any school, who merely needs to pay a monthly server fee if they don't have a local server. These classes wouldn't just be text and videos like many modern MOOCs, whatever that means. That's already what education is. Instead, they will provide a variety of learning resources that students can select to best fit their preferred methods for learning, including text, video, hands-on activities, and projects. These could be structured along the lines of quests, where students complete tasks that, when completed, unlock new tasks. Learning activities will focus on fundamental skills and knowledge that will benefit students in the long run and make them adaptable, creative thinkers. The future will allow students to advance at their own pace. Rather than the classroom we see today, where all students are led at the same pace, the future will allow students to advance at their own pace, and if they start falling behind the expected goals, they can more easily be identified and receive more one-to-one instructional support. Let students' interests guide them to learn through knowledge and learning trees. And here's an example from Dave. We should learn children's individual aptitudes early in school and let their interests guide them to learn through knowledge and learning trees. Rather than learning structure looking like a linear sequence of events, which every student must follow in the same way, advancement through learning will look like moving through several trees of knowledge and skills, much like a video game. In the stage I imagine following, there will be some form of AI that takes care of most of the teacher jobs, and students will primarily form relationships with students to support the development of students' identity, especially their character and general well-being. I hope that by this point, meditation, consciousness, and ego are major topics of conversation, or already have been for some time, and we began working toward a new level of consciousness. If so, I can't imagine that we would necessarily abandon the ego so much as recognize it and not allow it to act as a dominant force that drives our behaviors. By this stage, a greater awareness of one's place within a community and society as a whole will hopefully finally take precedence, and we will strive toward lives defined by purpose, exploration, progress, happiness, the common good, and lifelong learning and improvement. These are some of the possibilities for improving education. The entities who I've had information or ideas downloaded from in what I call knowing have encouraged me to pursue my passions for education and have to some degree opened my mind to the possibilities and vision of where our current broken system could head with a few mind shifts and technological developments, many of which are already within reach, but require funding and buy-in. Some of the ideas I've outlined here rely on anecdotal evidence from having piloted some of the concepts, like a quest-based skill tree at a small scale. Others are new ideas, like the breaking down of the problems that result from the ego and our social hierarchy, and encouraging a communal view of how we operate as a society. I have no predictions for the future, and the path I've outlined here is one that I have imagined in part, and in part have been guided to. It is likely not the best, and certainly not the only way to advance our system. It is one path that we could take, and a starting point for a vision that needs to be developed further, but seems promising. Through a strong initial implementation and rapid iteration, I hope to see this in my lifetime and would be thrilled to be a part of it. I would judge Dave as somewhere in his 30s. The ultimate goal, so far as I understand, is to recognize our place in the universe as explorers on a spherical spaceship rocketing through space, as curious and creative minds, and as a highly unified, highly connected, and more conscious people. I believe that we can achieve that. But first, we must restructure our systems, and more importantly, look inward to find that the problem is also within us as highly ego-driven and disconnected beings. So that's what Dave a part of what Dave had to say during the 2 hours that I interviewed him, and he had a lot more to say. Some things that maybe fit things that you're more familiar with. But I felt that his ideas on education were certainly worth hearing. I wish there were some teachers among us. I'm not sure whether there are or not. So that's all I have.